Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCG live codes, make sure you check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we are going to be discussing Gardevoir EX in the Paldea Evolved format. It's currently among the sort of top 5, top 6 best decks in the game, but it has some big upgrades from Paldea Evolved, pushing it into what could be the best deck in format. It has already proven itself with the EUIC and a few other high placements in regionals before Paldea Evolved has been released, but I believe Gardevoir gains some of the best stuff out of any decks in format from Paldea Evolved, in that it can use Iono much better than other decks. We're really looking to have good early game supporters because we're a setup stage 2 deck, so we are happy to play Iono on our first couple turns just to see more cards and get rolling into the game. So we're naturally increasing our early outs to good supporter cards by getting rid of the likes of Judge and Roxanne and upgrading them to Ionos. We just have much better early game options, but also because we are this stage 2 deck that relies on oftentimes getting multiple Psychic in the discard pile and have different attackers powered up ready to go, we can sometimes spend turns 1 and 2 just building up our board, trading away and whatnot, before we actually start launching any attacks. So we can easily go down 1 or 2 prize cards in that early game just while we're building into the perfect board state for Gardevoir, which then means we are more than happy to use Iono on our opponent throughout the game because we're constantly throwing them to a lower hand size whilst we continue to gain decent advantage whilst continuing to use Refinement and Shining Arcana Guardies to cycle more cards through the deck. So we have inbuilt Iono protection because we can draw so many cards, and because the Psychic Embrace ability works so well from a low hand size because that energy just is banked in the discard pile for whenever you need to use them, and we're really good at using Iono ourselves because we're naturally giving up prize cards to build up our board state. So just because Iono is such a shift in mentality with the Pokemon TCG, it completely changes the landscape of the game. The fact that Gardevoir naturally gets to take advantage of this better than most decks just means already that you're going to be in good shape. Let's have a look at some of the other cards other than Iono that are also making their way into Gardevoir players' lists. That is going to be Super Rod, which is a big upgrade to Miriam right now as our Pokemon recovery, because now it's an item, which is fantastic. It means we can use our supporters to continue drawing more cards, or we can use our supporters like Boss's Orders and whatnot to take out bench Pokemon. And just sort of as we cycle through the deck, we can use Super Rod just to reload our Pokemon quite efficiently. Yes, this is probably taking up more space than 1 copy of Miriam, because we're more than likely going to have to play 2 Super Rod here, just to make sure we are covering our bases with recovery. But I feel like this is just such a easier card to sort of splash in during your turn, whilst you're still getting other stuff done. It's really a big upgrade to what we currently have. And then Reversal Energy. This can only be attached to non-rulebox Pokemon, but fortunately, we have Shining Arcana Gardevoir here, and if we are behind on prize cards, just like I was saying with Iono, that happens fairly frequently with Gardevoir, we then get 3 Rainbow Energy in 1 energy attachment, which is amazing for Arcana Guardi, because then it pushes that Arcana into knockout range once we use Gardevoir EX to shove a bunch of Psychic Energy on top of our turn attachment of Reversal into 1-hit KOs. So yeah, it really makes this deck even more dangerous as a 1 prize attacking threat, and that's a big difference in terms of how the prize map will sort of shape out for this archetype. The recent results also really back up the dominance of Gardevoir EX. We can see that from the 2 large-scale tournaments that we've had so far in Niigata as well as Taiwan Championships, Gardevoir is littering that top 16, actually 3 top 8s in Niigata and technically 4 top 8s in Taiwan, but one of them is a slightly different variation that we're not going to be touching on too much today, the Gardevoir Mewtwo deck. That's going to be a different video, but also there's more down there in the top 16, so Gardevoir is everywhere. We actually don't have the full deck list data of Taiwan just yet, so there could be even more Gardevoir decks in that top 16, which is pretty insane. Very, very dominant right now, as you can see. Into my vanilla list then. I've talked about the upgrades. Like I said, Super Rod will be coming in as a 2 count into the deck list, so it is a little bit awkward losing a space, but it's such a big upgrade on Miriam, it seems like it's worthwhile. We're also going to be adding in the Reversal Energy, just one copy, so it is sometimes a little bit difficult to find, but we do have a ton of draws to try and help us get there. And of course, we still can just be spamming our Psychic Energies no matter what, and that's always a decent option for us. And then Iono is kind of the big upgrade here. This is where the supporter line really changes up. Where previously you would see 3 to 4 copies of Professor's Research, you would see sometimes a Serena in the deck list, sometimes you would see Judge and Roxanne as like 1 counts, but now we just get to play a flat for Iono, definitely one of the strongest supporters we could see in those opening stages, and it really just gets us on the board quickly. Outside of that, we've made a couple of flip-flops here. We're playing an additional Rare Candy, as well as an additional Shining Arcana Gardevoir, and we've cut away a Zacian V from the pre-Paldea Evolved deck lists, because like I said, Reversal Energy means that we get to be more single prize based, and that Brainwave becomes much more dangerous. And just having high Rare Candy, partly because mirror matches are going to be more prevalent now, and candying up into your Guardies is really important, of course, just to get that early Embrace rolling. Cresselia is often a really important card in that matchup, so candying and getting out of vulnerable Ralts and Kirlia range is really important, and this is, of course, allowing you to draw with Arcana that much more. And because we have those rods to reload our Gardevoirs, the candies just seem that little bit more relevant. Those are really the big differences that you can see from pre-Paldea lists. I have currently cut to Luminion V as well. That was in towards second place EUIC 60, of course. But I think just with the higher count of good supporters in Iono and Research now, I think we kind of get away with it more often than not. But you could easily see the fish making its way back into the deck list if you wanted to just give yourself sort of +3 outs to a supporter, because the Ultra Balls then would add to the Luminion part of things. The only issue being that as soon as you put Luminion in the deck, it gives your opponent more multi-prizes to capitalize on. Let's talk a little bit more about some other options, actually. So I've just discussed the fish, but you could also have a look at Kirlia. That Mirage Step option is still available, and we still see it in a decent number of these Japanese and Taiwanese lists. Not all of them, and I will say the majority of them are now playing Quad Refinement, but there are still some playing Mirage Step. There's also still a somewhat of a debate around stadium cards. Artisan is a new stadium card, which is powerful for getting set up. And I think if you're not too big on playing the Temple of Sinnoh, you can certainly sub that out. I think you're pretty much always playing Collapsed Stadium, but the Temple is a little bit more flexible, I think, to allow you to squeeze in this Artisan or possibly even a Champs Festival, just for more consistency from Artisan or Champs Fest, helping you push even more with Shining Arcana Guardi. There is some anti-synergy with the Temple of Sinnoh, of course. You can't use Reversal Energy if you are using Temple to bounce your or your opponent's paths, so that's something to bear in mind. We could actually lean more heavily into Reversal Energy, and I know the Taiwan winning list was playing double Reversal and Luxray. I just wanted to give a very vanilla shell, but this is definitely an option you could be going for. Luxray is a very powerful card. When you are, once again, behind on prize cards, you can immediately bench this Stage 2 Luxray, and if you use Reversal Energy, we have access now to a Lightning-type attacking presence, which is very good against Lugia V-Star as well as Palkia V-Star, and in general, just 180 hit points on 180 damage on a 150 hit point Pokemon is also pretty powerful. Gallade is also probably worth thinking about. It could be another way that you can protect yourself from Iono, and it can also work very well with Reversal Energy at the same time. 160 and possibly moving a Reversal to one of your bench Pokemon can also be quite powerful. I talked about how Iono is good at kind of overtaking all the other supporters in the deck, but you could also see splashes of a few other things here. Zinnia and Serena both add to our discard synergy cards. Serena could be in place of one of these copies of Boss's Orders, if you just want to get a little bit of extra percentages for early game outs. And Zinnia could possibly go in the slot of one of the Researches, or even one copy of the Iono could go into Zinnia's, just so that you have even more discard potential. Avery could be a frustrating Mirror Tech card, and can also sometimes be annoying against the likes of Mew players. So I think that's also possibly worth thinking about. And then there's also the Skyseal Stone that has currently been cut from the list, and that is once again because we are going more heavily down a one prize route, that we're leaning less into this Zacian V if we can help it. Sometimes it's still our finishing attacker, sometimes we'll still use this early as a sponge against the likes of Lost Zone Box, but we are leaning less into this Skyseal Stone combo, Because, of course, once again, we are in an Iono-based format, you're oftentimes going to have your hand disrupted, so you're not easily going to be able to find your Zacian SkySeal on the turn that you need it. Onto some matchups then. So it really looks like right now, pre-Paldea Evolved, Gardevoir is that sort of 50-50 deck. It's slightly sub 50-50 from the matchup data from online tournament results, but right now there aren't any truly bad matchups outside of Lost Zone Box. And I think with the upgrades of consistency, thanks to Iono, disruption thanks to Iono, and the more power potential we have as a one-prize deck, thanks to Reversal Energy, I do believe that this deck will now start becoming the sort of 55% matchup deck against everything in format, aside from Lost Zone Box, which is still hanging on in there as the biggest counter deck that we have to Gardevoir. Now, I do think Lost Zone is going to have to sort of think twice about how it wants to navigate through this format, because Iono is a headache for it, even in the hands of Gardevoir players. So I feel like the matchup is probably getting closer than what it was, but I still feel that Lost Zone Box has a lot of ways of beating the Gardevoir. They have a lot of early tempo, a lot of disruption at their disposal in terms of just knocking out Ralts after Ralts, Kirlia after Kirlia, and just make life very difficult for the Gardevoir player to set up to their fullest extent. So I do feel like that's going to continue to be the worst matchup, but everything else seems very winnable in my eyes. On to the closing thoughts then. Honestly, with these upgrades, Gardevoir is probably going into the NAIC as the expected best deck in formats. We will start to have some online tournaments, obviously, before NAIC, so we will get some data to work off of, but I think most people seeing those two large-scale Eastern results put this deck on a pedestal and think that it is the strongest archetype, and I tend to agree. I feel like it has everything. It has great disruption, it has great one-hit KO potential, it has fantastic draw power. It really ticks a lot of boxes in format, so I do feel like this has the chops to be the best deck, but I still feel like Lost Zone is going to be the thing keeping it in check. If you were keeping an eye on some of the other results outside of the Gardevoirs doing well, especially in the Niigata tournaments, there was a lot of Lost Zone-based decks. There was Goodras, there was Tinas, and there was Lost Zone Boxes themselves. And I feel like it's pretty obvious that that's going to be one of the best ways you can try and target the Gardevoir deck. So I feel like Lost Zone isn't going anywhere. It's going to continue to be this thorn in the side of Gardy, and that's still one of the only things that this deck can sort of falter against, I feel like. Now, Iono and Reversal Energy certainly help out, but it's still not a done deal. Let me know your thoughts on Gardevoir down below. Let me know if you like the list or you are experimenting with some other cards in the deck list. But yeah, it seems to be the best deck going forward. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you tomorrow for another video. Cheers.